Whether it's making professional videos or engaging documentaries, Eyes Multimedia does it all. But what does it take to become a great filmmaker? Award-winning multimedia journalist Elton Hubner shares the tools one needs to tell enthralling stories. He also talks about what he learned during the production of their latest documentary, Brother Rick, which will be played at the Victoria Film Festival on February 10th.
Thanks, Ryan, for having me again. So my name is Elton, like Elton John. I'm used to saying this for many, many years. I am 41, a little bit older than you, and I came to Canada about 11 years ago when I came for good. I came first. It was love at first sight. I arrived in Toronto. Before I got in downtown, I already knew this is it. This is the place I have been looking for. And then I had to leave the country and went back to Germany, got my master's degree in media, and came back about 11 years ago. And since then, I have been working full-time with video production, 80% of what we do, and about 20% is photography, which I have been doing longer, for longer than video. So I've been a photographer for maybe 20 some years, and I discovered video only 12, 13 years ago. That's when I started, and then I moved into Vancouver. I opened my company, and that's what we do.
It's so fun to see how photography can just naturally progress into video production. It's just you're just adding some more photos in there.
That's right. But you also add, with videos, you add sound. And I remembered, Ryan, when I wrote my dissertation, it was about Sasha Petrosek. He's a CBC video journalist. And he told me, pictures will show you a place, but the sound will take you there. So over the years, I have, improved, I think, my hearing to hear things that we don't hear when we are starting or when we are amateurs and when we are just consuming content.
Audio production and audio direction in a film or a video project can make or break it. There's so many movies where you're listening to it and you're like, I can't. And I mean, there's a whole conversation about like surround sound towards a home theater production and how like there's been a struggle between like what sort of format, but that's another conversation for a different time. But it's so cool to hear your story and your journey, and even more exciting is news is, and congratulations, is your new short documentary Brother Rick, which will be showing at the Victoria Film Festival. Without spoiling too much, what can you tell us about this film?
First of all, this is a passion project. So here in our studio and with our company, we create videos for marketing purposes, for sales. We help businesses increase their sales, basically. But besides doing this, I always want to get something going in my personal life. And if I can combine that with the skills and resources that we already have, that is a bonus. So every year now, I am working on a passion project. I had one that lasted for 3.5 years. It took us 3.5 years to finish a film. That was The Fifth Generation, about active seniors. And this time, Brother Rick is a 15-minute documentary. So it took us only 1 year to finish, and not 3.5. And it's a very inspiring story about an elder from Victoria or near Victoria. You help me here with the pronunciation, okay? He's from the Kutsun First Nation.
Ooh, okay. I'd have to look up that one. I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, but he lives at a place called Beecher Bay in Souk, so by Victoria. And he's probably in his mid-60s, I would say. And he goes to public schools around to Vancouver Island, and he talks to kids of all ages, and teaches them things like drumming, fishing, and preparing foods. And he talks about residential schools and so on. So he basically has built a bridge between his culture and, let's call it, our culture. So it's amazing. So when I met him many years ago, let's say 5 years ago, I kept that story in mind. I filmed him for a different project, and then about a year and a half ago, when I decided, when these sad stories about the residential schools came out, I decided, hey, what can I do? At least one story. There must be one story out there that at least I can help to share. And then I thought of this guy, and I just found him, and he agreed. I was lucky he agreed to be a part of this project.
It's really cool to see individuals connecting to create stories that focus and highlight Indigenous culture and the works, because we're still seeing the ripple effects of the residential school system here, as well as just systemic laws and systems in place that have not been great for Indigenous folks. So highlighting these stories is so important, and we have a number of projects that we're working on too. So just seeing that another organization is feeling passionate about telling the stories is so cool.
And right, I came in without any agenda, and I honestly, I don't even share much of my opinion when I am producing these stories. I don't think it matters so much. I try to use my skills to share the stories as best as I can. But in this film, we interviewed several people that actually work in some of these schools that where Broderick goes and talks to the kids and so on, and they are able to add a little bit, some more layers of depth, I would say, and then putting that story together, I think it is quite I would say an unbiased way to tell the stories of how someone like Broderick, who has gone through a lot in his life, how he's able to, let's say, leave that in the past, and the message that he has for all of us to move forward. That's the key message in the film. It's about the future.
Moving forward in a positive way, understanding and reflecting on the history, but not living
exactly
in history.
And I think, and I learned from the previous documentary too, and again with this, there are people who will just act on their dreams and their purpose in life, no matter what obstacle they face. They just keep moving forward. And this just came up again with Broderick. He was personally not full-time in a residential school, only part-time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like day school?
Exactly, day school. But he mentions very briefly only, he did not want this to be, about all the terrors that they went through. He only mentioned a little bit that his dad, who had been to a residential school, told him some of the bad things that happened to him and made him promise not to tell his siblings about it. And then I wanted him, the investigative journalist in me was, oh, why not? And he said, let's change the topic, so that's it. So bad things happened, but his message is, he looks at all these young kids and he says, I just don't want anyone to have to go through this anymore.
I talked to Nettie Wild. She was talking about like how the process of approaching a documentary and telling a story, how a lot of times, and this is something I'm going to have to learn as I'm thinking about heading into the industry, of like how to not be preachy with the message and just to tell a story from she did a story and covered the fishing in the far north of commercial fishing practices, and focusing on the story of hey, this is a challenge, the individuals and environmentalists that are fighting against these practices, but also showcasing the stories, the anglers, the fisher people who are going out to make money for their families, and highlighting both of those elements to tell the complete story so that the audience can then come to a conclusion for themselves.
I actually think that many times in the media, but not only in the media like news, many times we tend to think that we think right, and we are intelligent enough to think for ourselves, and we don't want to stop there because we think, oh, I am intelligent enough to think for myself, therefore I should be taking over other people's ability to think, and I should think for them as well and tell them what they should think.
Yeah, no, I completely understand.
I think that's a huge mistake. If you are a storyteller, you are a storyteller. You don't, if you want to have your own podcast where you voice your opinions and preach, fine. But if you're taking your resources and skills to go and share someone else's story, then your opinion should not, perceived, I would say. Not necessarily.
Yeah, there's a time and a place to be like right here, we can express our opinions on topics and things. But in terms of creating a documentary, of telling a story, it is not our place as filmmakers, as storytellers, to inject our personal experiences and beliefs into that story.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned, the time difference, 3 years versus 1 year. Is one of the differences between these two projects, the Fit Generation and Brother Rick. What were some of the other aspects in that process that were different, or things that you learnt from the Fit Generation that you applied to this project?
The Fit Generation featured 6 stories, and Brother Rick was 1. So that is already a huge difference. Plus the length of the film. For anyone who is interested in creating videos or getting into filmmaking, I would highly suggest that you start with shorts. I did not do that. My first documentary was, I think, 50 minutes long. Oh, a year and a half or 2 years, to edit it in my free time. You can get it done within a few weeks if you're getting paid for it, if that's what you're doing full time. Right? That's what people do in the studios. But if you are starting with a passion project, short, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes. And another lesson that I learned was that I should picture the final story before starting it. I went into the first project thinking, okay, I will just follow these people, very amateur. I'll follow them, capture everything, and then the story will come together by itself. So with the last documentary, okay, so what's the story? How does it end? What's the message? All the pieces were coming together before I even got started.
That's probably a good way to approach this. Otherwise, you see so many productions where you're like, what were they thinking in here? Clearly they didn't have a plan when they go in. A big one right now, the Witcher Blood Origins, I think it's called. It's just such a mess of a production that it's hard to believe that like they clearly didn't have an idea of what they were going into. It almost feels like it was a different idea that they then slapped the Witcher logo on to try and be like, okay, let's try and make something out of this.
And practice leads to perfection or close to it. You get way better the more you do something. So there were obviously other lessons that I learned along the way that made this not only faster and easier, but a more pleasant process as well. And things like being organized or knowing how much you should film before you start filming, knowing how to conduct an interview in a smoother way, being prepared for the worst case scenarios, and more technical stuff as well, like always have plenty of batteries, spare screws, spare tripods, plans B and C, plans for just in case it rains, in case it snows, in case the person is not available, in case the person is late, in case there's some hum in the building. Always being prepared for all these things that you wouldn't know if it were your first project.
Oh, I definitely know about being prepared. For one of the intro courses I took, it was to do a scene-for-scene reenactment of a film. So I had one set up from Jaws where it's like the dad and the son sitting in the room together and the son's like replicating his dad. So I had that all prepped up, and then all the people that said, yeah, we're available for it, all fell through. So it's like, okay, let's do another one and just drive out somewhere and just do it in one afternoon, which was awful, scary. Luckily, it turned out okay, better than I expected in the end. But yeah, being prepared is so important, and if I would have had a plan B beforehand instead of being like, yeah, it'd be fine.
And do you do this too? Do you kind of rehearse or visualize yourself in a podcast before it starts?
Yeah, I like to visualize things. It's the same thing I do for when I play D&D and stuff. I like to play out, okay, what is the scenario? What are some things that might happen? What is it going to look like to film? So when I was thinking about, okay, what's my plan B going to be? I was thinking, okay, we need an outdoor location where there's grasses and things out in there. Oh, I know Birds Hill. Okay, I know exactly the spot that I remember. So went out there. It's like, okay, this is perfect. There's no one here. It was cold and miserable, but part of that led into the feel of isolation and I don't want to do this sort of thing, which kind of executed well for the feeling of the actual film we were replicating. So it was pretty fun and it worked out, but being more prepared probably would have been better. I have a bad habit of just, thinking about it, but not actually writing it down.
What happens to me sometimes now, not as often, because I started practicing being there and seeing things, visualizing it. Before doing that, there were many nights when I couldn't sleep because I was doing that while I was dreaming. So I would dream the entire time. Like if I had a very important shoot the next morning, I would dream all night about that shoot. And so I started now doing this exercise before going to bed. Okay, I am arriving there at this time, let's say half an hour earlier. And then I do this, and then I leave my equipment at this corner. And then I have time to talk to everybody. And then I have time to scout out the location. And where am I going to park? And what time is the person? So I go through all these scenarios before going to bed. If I don't do this, I will do this while I'm dreaming.
Yeah. Then you don't get as well of a restful sleep then.
Not at
your
all.
brain's going too much. I completely get that. I'm exactly the same.
Yeah, I think it's very important for anybody who is, also getting into filmmaking to rehearse in your mind, even before you grab your camera and go and do everything you are supposed to do with the camera.
So how about we talk a little bit about what Eyes Multimedia is up to now that your project is done, it's being featured, and of course, part of what you're doing right now is promoting it and celebrating it. But what's kind of next?
Ryan, thank you for asking this because I'm so grateful for all the opportunities that Canada has given me as a newcomer over a decade ago. And I feel that I have evolved so much professionally and also individually because there are so many opportunities in place already. So you come here with this willingness to learn and to persevere. And I think it's very important to network. And now we are at the stage where just this morning, just before talking to you, I was talking to the landlord in the same building. We are moving to a much larger space, more than twice as large as where we are now. And we are going to start offering podcasts. The great thing. Yeah, so we have a few great ideas for the year. And we also work with super nice clients, and mostly in the education industry, universities and colleges. And that also is a way for me to stay connected to many international students and other people who come with this energy and all these dreams to come true.
Building those connections is so important. That's something I'm trying to do as well, just on a personal level, not just for the organization U Multicultural, but going out. For the first time this year, I decided, hey, I'm going to help deliver. It was only like 2 hampers this year, but I decided to go out and deliver hampers for Christmas. And I was like, okay, this feels good. Get involved in the community, meet some people, connect with grassroots organizations and community. And with like Brother Rick, that's how you find these amazing stories. That you go out, you connect with people, and you're like, wow, that's a great story. Let's tell it.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to know from you, what are your plans for this year with the
Oh, well,
channel,
yeah,
the
U
podcast?
Multicultural has a ton of stuff. We're building our studio. We're still in the process of kind of finalizing our CRTC licensing for our FM radio station, hoping to get that up and in getting people to come down, teach them about radio, and just have them do a show, like for an hour segment. It's like, come down, talk about your community. You can talk in your language. It doesn't matter. Come down. Getting people to come down into the studio again and host their own shows. We're currently in the process of having conversations with Rossbrook House here in Winnipeg to work with some of the inner city students and get them interested in media and communications and teach them about, how to operate cameras, how to operate audio, how to, host your own podcast or writing articles and things. So that's kind of the process we're doing right now. And then we're in the middle of filming our Indigenous Languages series, reaching out to more people to talk about the languages of Inuktitut, Cree, and Ojibwe. So we've got a ton of stuff, and there's always more that pops up along the way.
I see you are becoming a mentor as well.
I'm trying. I'm trying my best. Hitting that age, we're getting into that time. So yeah, I feel like I've accrued some knowledge that maybe I could pass it on and maybe help people get to the place they want to be a little faster than it took me.
Yeah. Great.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for having me today.
Elton, it is always a pleasure to connect with you and talk with you and see the amazing works that you're doing.
For anyone who is interested in watching Brother Rick on the big screen in Victoria, we're going to be there at the film festival, Victoria Film Festival, on the 10th of February. They're going to show our film because it's a short. They're going to show it together with other short films, all about Indigenous. They're all Indigenous stories, all about First Nations.
Have any stories you'd like us to share or communities we should highlight? Leave a comment on our social media or reach out to us on our website. I'm Ryan Funk. This was You Talk, and have yourself a good one.